I grabbed the wrong suitcase, and a billionaire fell in love with my perfume. I know how that sounds like a headline your aunt would text into the family chat, but hear me out. If a stranger opened your bag and found the one thing that still smells like your grandmother's hands, would you want them to return it untouched, or would you want them to feel it first? My name is Nia. I run a small flower shop in Atlanta called Petal and Stem. Pretty name, squeaky cooler rent that gives you indigestion, but it's mine. This started on a Sunday night when the airport felt like a bus station, in a heat wave, loud and tired, and full of people who just want to be home already. I'd just flown back from Barbados, first real vacation in 5 years, a place where the water is the exact color you dream about when life gets too loud. I promised myself I'd sleep in my own bed, drink tea from my chipped mug, and hang my peach scarf, the one my grandmother gave me, over the chair like a flag for peace. The carousel spun navy bags went by. I saw a navy bag with a scrape on the corner like mine, and I took it. No prayer, no double check, no thought. It clicked into place behind me like fate pretending to be a zipper. Pattern interrupt. He was on a private jet. Not coach. Not business. Private. His name is Cassian Royce, and if you've ever flipped through one of those glossy catalogs full of linen sheets that never wrinkle candles with names like Midnight Porch Kitchens where nobody ever burns the toast, he's the guy who sells you the dream. 32 quiet eyes, the kind of suit that makes a sound when it moves. He pulled open his navy suitcase expecting spreadsheets that bite shirts with collars that could slice a lemon, maybe a leather portfolio with tabs. Instead, a peach scarf folded soft, like a hug, a battered journal, with pressed flowers slipping out like secrets, and a little glass bottle with a simple label that said jasmine and honey. He took off the cap. He didn't know me. He didn't know that scent is my family language, that my grandmother used to warm honey with jasmine petals on the stove and test the balance with her eyes closed, like she was listening to a song only she could hear. He just breathed in, and something happened inside him that he wouldn't admit out loud for weeks. Not lightning. More like a door opening in a dark room, a room he forgot he had. Meanwhile, I dragged the suitcase up to my second-floor apartment, kicked off my shoes, promised myself I'd unpack tomorrow. I slept like people sleep when they've avoided tears by pure exhaustion. In the morning, I unzipped the case and froze. Not my clothes. Men's shirts that cost more than my whole week of inventory. A portfolio full of papers, a business card tucked in with a name that looked like it had its own publicist. Cassian Royce, CEO, Royce Enterprises. I heard my grandmother's voice in my head saying, "You're good, baby, you're careful, but sometimes the world wants you to meet someone on purpose." I reached for my phone to call the airline, and an unknown number lit up, and you know that prickly feeling at the back of your neck when life decides now. That. Is this Nia Brooks' calm, practiced voice? Yes, I said, half a whisper. I'm Marcus, Mr. Royce's assistant. There's been a luggage mix-up. Mr. Royce will be in Atlanta tomorrow and would like to arrange a direct exchange 4 Seasons 4 p.m. if that suits you. 4 p.m. 4 Seasons. Not baggage claim. Not curbside. I said yes with a mouth that felt suddenly dry. When I hung up, I stared at the suitcase like it was a live animal. Someone I didn't know had my scarf, my journal, and my grandmother's perfume. If it were you, what would you have done? Drive to the hotel immediately and sit there until opening time? Or trust the stranger with the steady assistant and the expensive stationery? The lobby at 4 was all marble and whispers air that smelled faintly like lemon oil and power. The elevator doors opened at exactly the right moment, like a cue in a movie, and the man himself stepped out, with Marcus trailing him like the period at the end of a sentence. He looked at me the way you look at a painting you weren't ready for. Not trying to be rude, just a little unsteady in the face of whatever moved. "Miss Brooks," he said, voice low enough that I felt it in my chest first. "Yes. Mr. Royce, I'm so sorry about the bag. It's fine," he said. Not like a dismissal, more like a decision, a line drawn so we could both step over. Marcus set my Navy case beside me with the kind of care usually reserved for babies and violins. The exchange could have ended there. It didn't. "If you have 10 minutes, he said, "would you join me for coffee? I owe you at least that much for your trouble." I wasn't sure if it was courtesy curiosity or something stranger that made me say yes. Maybe it was the faintest trace of jasmine and honey in the space between us, a ghost of my grandmother's kitchen on a billionaire's cuff. We sat where the carpet made you walk softer, and the cups made a little click when you set them down. He asked about me with no fluff. Not intrusive, not corporate, just direct. I told him about Petal and Stem, about how I opened it 3 years ago, with a loan that felt like a dare, about how I like wildflowers, because they don't care about perfection, they care about sunlight. He knew the name of my shop. He knew because he'd seen my journal. He admitted it, eyes dipping for the first time. I saw one page, he said, the expansion sketch. I was trying to find the owner. "Next time try the luggage tag," I said, and smiled so he'd know I wasn't made of glass. He nodded like that was fair. Then he said, simple as a grocery list, "I have a proposition. We're launching a new home line. Our floral imagery looks expensive and dead. Yours looks alive. Would you consult? Part-time your terms." I laughed, that short, nervous kind, because here's the thing. The right offer at the wrong time can feel like a trick. "You don't know me," I said. "I know what good feels like when it hits," he said, and I recognized that look in his eyes, because I get it too when a bouquet lands exactly right, when a widow picks up peonies and holds them the way you hold a memory. He didn't push. He slid a card across the table, not gold, not flashy, just weighty. "Think about it," he said. "If it were you, would you have taken that card? Or is there a part of you that backs away from everything you've ever wanted when it shows up too fast and too shiny?" 2 days later, he came to my shop wearing jeans for the first time in his adult life, if I had to guess. Petal and Stem is small. Shelves with mismatched vases, a hand-painted sign I made with Lisa after a bottle of cheap wine plants climbing the window like a promise. He walked slow, like he was afraid to break anything. "These," I told him, holding up a bunch of stems that looked like a small field in my hands, "are honest flowers." "Honest," he said. "They don't pretend to be perfect. They're a little wild, a little bruised, and somehow exactly themselves. That's the kind of beauty that sticks." He nodded, and I could see him seeing it. We went through colors, textures, what I call light catchers, and what his team calls forward palette. He didn't correct my words, he adopted them. That mattered. Then he invited me to present to marketing. I almost said no because imposter syndrome is a real disease that eats at your edges. But he said, "I want them to hear your language." And I realized he wasn't trying to translate me into corporate. He was trying to translate corporate into me. The meeting was every movie you've ever seen about conference rooms. Glass walls, skyline chairs that cost more than my first car. Victoria, sharp and sure, watched everything with a mind like a scalpel. Richard threw around phrases like brand congruence and cost density, which is a fancy way to say scared. Cassian let him finish, then said, "We can afford to look alive." Just like that. Not a slogan, a choice. Victoria smiled. We chose 3 of my concepts, the ones that felt like rooms people actually breathe in. He invited me to dinner at his house that night. I said maybe. He said he didn't want cameras on our faces while we tried to have a real conversation. I said, okay. His place sits on a hill where the city looks like a necklace somebody left on the dresser. The kitchen is real, there are knife marks on the cutting board. He cooked salmon and roasted carrots like a man who learned to make food because nobody else would. And something about that tenderness cracked open a piece of me I hadn't touched since my grandmother's funeral. We talked about mothers, about growing up with little, and learning how to make that feel like enough. When we finished, he took my hand, turned it over, and pressed a slow, respectful kiss into the center. Not performative, not hungry. Intimate like a vow you make to your own heart. Yeah, that happened. And then, the first fracture. Pattern interrupt. The next morning I show up to present the final tweaks, and he's a rectangle on a screen, tie perfect eyes guarded. Ms. Brooks, he says like last night was a short story we both imagined. He's in New York, board week. Nobody told me. He doesn't explain. I stand there and smile like a professional while my stomach goes cold. After no text. Nothing. 2 days. If it were you, would you have texted him first? Or is there a part of you that would rather ache than feel needy? On the third day, a delivery arrives. A blue scarf, the exact color of my eyes, a handwritten note in a careful hand. He says board meetings are booked months in advance, that he should have told me that busyness isn't an excuse for carelessness. He says he misses the way I make rooms feel quiet. He asks for dinner Friday, my pick. I pick a place with wood tables and a chalkboard menu where we can pretend to be ordinary. I'm not good at this, he says once we sit. He means intimacy. He means telling the truth before the fear speaks first. He admits in a voice that makes room for an apology that when he got my name from the luggage tag, he asked Marcus to pull public records basics to be sure he wasn't walking into a scam. That's the twist. That's the part where the ground stops being the ground and becomes something else. You had me investigated. I keep my voice level, not because I'm calm, but because dignity is a language I promised myself to speak even when I'm trembling. Public information, he says quickly. No deep dive. I was wrong to do it without telling you. It was reflex. Caution has kept me alive in rooms where nobody hands you anything. Did it tell you about Derek? I ask. Because if we're pulling threads, let's tug the right one. My ex, the man who called off the wedding a month before, then told anyone who would listen that I wasn't ambitious enough to be seen beside him. His jaw tightens. I read a mention he admits. I'd rather hear it from you, so I tell him. Not the whole ugly, just enough. His response isn't violent or performative. It's disgust, carved quiet. He's a fool, he says, and the way he says it, not pity, not savior, just factual, lets me breathe again. We talk like adults. We set terms. I tell him I won't be his project, his PR makeover, his earnest little florist. He trots out when the brand needs authenticity. He tells me he wants to learn how to be a person who doesn't try to fix everything by throwing resources at it. We both nod like we just signed something without the paper. He asks me to come to New York for the launch. I say yes because fear is loud and life is short. Stick around because what happened next will blow your mind. New York hums even when it's quiet. His penthouse overlooks the park, and yes, there's a guest room, but he asks me to stay with him like a man who understands the difference between convenience and closeness. The morning schedule Marcus brings is military grade. Cassian moves meetings like Tetris to carve out an hour on the roof before the day eats us. Up there, he tells me the truth that doesn't fit into a press release. This city gave me everything I thought I wanted, he says, looking out over 1,000 windows. It took other things. My peace, my patience, my ability to sit still with someone I care about and not look at a screen. He says it like a confession. I hear it like a promise to do different. The creative team gets me. The venue is a labyrinth of rooms meant to look like homes, And for once, the flowers don't feel like props. At a pre-launch dinner, an investor calls my shop quaint with a smile that smells like condescension, disguised as charm. Cassian doesn't perform, he doesn't puff, he just rests a hand at my back, the place that says I see you, and says her work is the anchor of this campaign. Not savior, partner. That difference matters. Then the part you could have predicted, but I still wasn't ready for. A gossip site runs a photo of us walking in the park, calls me his mystery woman, lists my shop address like I'm a public attraction. The comments are knives. Gold digger. Not even that pretty. Social climber. Do you think that's fair? And if your partner's world came with that kind of shadow, would you stand in the light anyway, or step aside and choose quiet? At the launch for a few hours at least, the work drowns out the noise. People step into the rooms, slow down, actually breathe. Victoria squeezes my arm and whispers, "You gave these products a story." A reporter corners me near the linen display, smile bright and brittle. "Are you two together?" Nia Marcus slides in like a stagehand hitting his cue. "Ms. Brooks is needed for the creative photo," he says, and leads me away with a nod I'll always be grateful for. That night, the apartment is quiet. Cassian reads the article with my phone in his hand, like a live wire. "I'm sorry," he says, and it's not the way people say sorry when they just want the moment over. Being with me means this might happen. I won't lie to you. I can't make the world kind. We sleep with an inch of space between us that feels like a mile. In the morning, he kisses my shoulder like a question, and I say, "Walk with me." We circle the park while the city pretends to be calm. I tell him I'm scared and stubborn, and maybe built for something smaller, but I want this anyway. He stops under a tree and says steady like a man signing his name, "I love you, Nia," in daylight, with runners and strollers and strangers. He doesn't whisper it like a secret. He says it like a choice. I say it back, because what else do you call the thing that keeps pulling you into rooms you were sure would spit you out? Back in Atlanta, we try something radical for people like us. We live like humans. He delegates. He fights the itch to fix everything by sending a car or buying an answer. I apply for a small business loan the old-fashioned way, not with his name but with my numbers. And I get it because sometimes the long road is the only way to believe you earned what you have. We fight small and fair. I tell him I'll send a car feels like control, even when it's care. He tells me I can handle it. Sometimes sounds like I don't want you. We apologize. We practice. That's the part nobody claps for. That's the part that works. He brings me a gift one night that sits complicated in my chest. A little bottle like the one he found etched with my name filled with jasmine and honey. He had recreated from the last drops I brought home in a tissue-wrapped vial. "So you never run out," he says, and it lands like a blessing and a challenge at the same time. Is it romantic to find a way to keep something sacred alive, or presumptuous to analyze what grief gave you and turn it into supply? Both can be true. I cry anyway. He holds me like he's learning how to carry something breakable without gripping too hard. And because this is real life, not a montage, the internet finds me again. A blogger posts that I used him for contracts and loans, that my shop was failing, until I latched onto a billionaire. It's not true. It doesn't matter. Lies on a screen still land in your body like a bruise. I stand behind my counter reading comments until my thumb cramps. Lisa, my best friend, looks up from wiring tulips and says, "Nope," flips the sign to "closed" for 5 minutes, pours coffee like medicine. "Tell him," she says. Not because I need rescuing, because secrecy eats you alive. He answers on the second ring like he was holding the phone waiting for me. He shows up 20 minutes later, with hair he clearly ran his hand through on the way out of whatever meeting he left. He reads without flinching and asks me the only question that matters. What do you want me to do? Nothing, I say. Not right now. I want to stand here and not let this move me. He nods, comes around the counter and starts unboxing roses like he works here. We do not post. We do not clap back. We outlast it. The next morning, he uses his company memo to do something small and revolutionary. He names women creators by name in an internal note about credit and narrative, and yes, it's corporate, and yes, it matters. Micro shifts, ground moving under feet you never see. 3 months later, the cafe side of Petal and Stem opens. White cups that fit your handwrite, scones Lisa learned to bake from YouTube, and stubbornness, a corner shelf full of paperbacks people actually read. He walks in with a bag of beans he roasted with a chef friend, kisses my cheek, and tells me he gave a presentation to the board that wasn't his because he had someone else do it and trusted them to shine. Pride looks good on him when it's about other people. And then, the full circle you think you see coming, but still shakes you. We're headed back to Barbados, because the place that starts a story deserves to see it grow legs. On the tarmac by the car, there's a brand new Navy suitcase. Thought we could make a better memory with one of these, he jokes, and I laugh because, yeah. I open it, and sitting on top is my peach scarf, the one that's touched every major day of my life since 19. Under it, a small velvet box. He kneels in a suit he will absolutely get dusty in front of a man loading someone else's luggage, and a woman in orange safety headphones who decides to watch. He says, "You changed my life the day I opened your suitcase and felt something wake up. Will you marry me? No theatrics, no drone shot, just the truth." I say yes because sometimes you're allowed to choose the thing that scares you, not because it's perfect, but because it's alive. We go back to that beach. The water is still that impossible blue. We bring the journal. We press a fresh jasmine between blank pages. We talk about ugly practicals, holidays with my aunties who will judge him with love press boundaries, no phone nights with Marcus as the emergency gatekeeper. What it means to raise kids in a world where a camera lives in your pocket and the comments are never gentle. We don't say happily ever after. We say happily as we work at it. Big difference. And here's where I want to leave you. Not in the fairy tale, not in the scandal, but in the question that still makes my chest tight. When someone with power uses that power to vet you before they meet you, is that caution or control? Do you forgive it if they choose honesty later? When a woman from a small shop brings soul into a brand that sells perfection, who gets to decide what's authentic and what's marketable? And what about the rest of it? The class, the press, the way money makes doors swing open while you're still figuring out if you even want the room. Do you think that's fair? If it were you, would you have taken that coffee in the hotel lounge knowing what you know now? Would you have said yes at the tarmac dust on his knee, your heart doing that crazy sparrow thing in your chest? Or would you have taken your peach scarf and your journal and walked away because quiet felt safer than being loved out loud by a man whose name trends on a Tuesday? Me. I chose the messy middle. I chose the man who can buy almost anything but still learn to cook because it matters to feed someone you love. I chose my business on my terms, and the kind of love that makes me braver, not smaller. Some days that looks like flowers in a sunlit window and a cup of coffee that hits just right. Some days it looks like closing the shop for 5 minutes and breathing through a headline. You know what I mean? All right. Your turn. I want to hear you in the comments. Tell me the part that made you mad, the part that made you soft, the part that reminded you of the one time you chose risk over comfort, and it paid off, or didn't. Argue with me about privacy, about background checks, about how we're supposed to love people whose worlds are louder than ours. Tell me what you would have done at baggage claim at the Four Seasons, in the boardroom, on the roof, on the tarmac. And if you've ever grabbed the wrong suitcase and ended up exactly where you were meant to be, I need to hear that story. Stick around, subscribe if you want more messy, human, real-life love with all the bruises and all the light. And drop your truth below, because that's how we turn a story into a conversation.